Good morning. Last night, Rabbi Berkman spoke beautifully about the losses we have all experienced during this last year and the grief associated with it. While holding that close this morning, I want to acknowledge that it is also true that most clouds, even this one, have silver linings. On a personal level, the great silver lining of this pandemic for me is that I was able to adopt a puppy this summer, realizing a lifelong dream. Ruby is a 4.5-month-old mutt from Mississippi, and she has brought joy, chaos, and even a little bit of Torah into my home. As a first-time dog owner, everything is brand new for me, and I have had a lot to learn. I have tried to educate myself as fast as possible so I can train Ruby, keep her safe, and raise a well-behaved dog. I know that I am biased, but I have to say that Ruby is very smart. She picked up sit, down, and stay very quickly. She understands no and come, and usually listens to me, especially when I have a treat in my hand. But she is horrible at heel. Every smell, sound, neighbor, and butterfly is a reason to veer off in a new direction or stop completely in her tracks. We make the most progress on our walks when I'm letting her pull me forward in pursuit of the object of her desire, usually another dog. A proper heel would mean that Ruby is walking alongside and a little behind me, following me with her head lined up with my leg or heel. It is the basic command that dog trainers say is the hardest to teach and takes the longest to learn. As Jews and as citizens of the 21st century, it is a commandment that we struggle with as well, both understanding it and practicing it. I don't mean to sound flippant, outdated, or unenlightened when I suggest that learning to heel is a spiritual practice. In this morning's Torah reading, which comes from Parashat Nitzavim, we read of Moses' desire to have us walk in the ways of God. See, I set before you this day life and good, death and bad. For I command you this day to love the Lord your God, to walk in his ways, and to keep his commandments, his laws, and his rules, that you may thrive and increase, and that the Lord your God may bless you. In the Jewish tradition, walking with God or in God's ways is one of the ultimate goals. To become someone who walks with God is to be like Noah, who is described as righteous and blameless in his generation. In fact, the term we use for Jewish law, halakha, literally means walking, and would probably best be translated as walking the path. As a Jew, it is one way to walk with God. But how can we understand what it means to walk with God if we don't follow halakha, or we don't even believe in a divine presence? And doesn't a spiritual practice of learning to heel risk the abdication of free will or devotion to a dangerous leader? First, let me say that trying to teach Ruby to heel has given me a lot of understanding of the relationship between God and the Israelites as they journey through the wilderness between Mount Sinai and the land of Israel. While we tend to use godlike to mean all-powerful or all-knowing, I can assure you that in this context, to be godlike means to be ignored, disobeyed, and running out of patience. I have never had more compassion for God's frustrations with the children of Israel, or his occasional desire to teach them a lesson by sending a plague, than during the last few weeks. But plagues and punishments are ways of teaching through fear and can only take us so far. What God wants is not blind obedience, but a partner. The Holy One of blessing wants a kingdom of priests and priestesses, a holy nation who will work with him in trust, faith, and understanding. That is not easy to achieve, and like all relationships, it requires hard work communication, and generosity that we practice this Day of Atonement through teshuvah, tefillah, and tzedakah. Even if we can't imagine what it means to walk with God, we can understand the spiritual benefit of learning to follow a trusted source. Practitioners of meditation often use an anchor, directing their attention to their breath or a place on their body. If you ever tried a mindfulness practice, you know that trying to sit or eat or walk in silence can be quite distracting. And if you've never tried it, perhaps you want to join Rabbi Berkman today at 2 p.m. Our minds, like Ruby, tend to chase whatever smell, sound, or idea captures their attention. Ooh, rabbit. Do you know who's a funny rabbit? Bugs Bunny. I thought he was the real star of Space Jam. Speaking of Space Jam, I'm not sure that Michael Jordan is still the greatest player ever. Once the train of thought has left the station, it can take minutes or hours before it returns. Practicing mindfulness means finding an anchor or something to help us heal, staying with each moment as it occurs, and noticing when we go astray. In meditation, when we realize that we have drifted into thought, we gently, compassionately acknowledge it and return our attention to our breath or other anchor. I've tried this approach with Ruby. Oh, puppy, I see that's a squirrel. I know you want to chase it, but let's return to our walk. It has yet to prove effective. At this point, she needs something more tangible to direct her attention, and our ancestors did as well. In Tractate Sota of the Babylonian Talmud, Rabbi Chama, the son of Rabbi Hanina, seeks to understand what it means to walk after God, since it might seem confusing. He explains that walking in the ways of God means emulating the attributes of the Holy One of Blessing, and he gives us 4 specific examples. Just as God clothes the naked, so too should we clothe the naked. Just as God visits the sick, so too should we visit the sick. Just as God consoles mourners, so too should we console mourners. And just as God buries the dead, so too should we bury the dead. To walk in the ways of God, the Jewish tradition teaches us that we don't have to abdicate free will or even believe in a divine presence, but we must practice kindness, generosity, and compassion. Rabbi Chama offers us 4 tangible ways to do this, but these ways of helping others and thus emulating God are not meant to be exhaustive. They are only examples. We must keep our heart, eyes, and ears open. We must pay attention to where there is pain, need, and vulnerability in our communities and our society, and then seek to address it. Rabbi Chama also provides a helpful litmus test for followership, since there is a shadow side to everything. And we know that some leaders can abuse the trust of their followers. Does following this path bring compassion and goodness in the world? If it does, then we can trust that we are on a good path. But if it brings more pain, hatred, or violence, then we must know that there is no value in fealty alone. Learning to heal is a worthwhile spiritual practice when we find a trusted source, because the world offers us endless possibilities and choices. To consider or pursue too many can cause stress, anxiety, or exhaustion. We are prone to making life too complicated because it's fun or enticing, or we just don't know any better. We crave options, but what we need is direction. That is the challenge of living in the modern world. Walking with the divine may not be easy, but it is meant to be simple. Before we are commanded in this morning's Torah to walk in God's ways, Moses explains to us, "Surely this instruction which I enjoin upon you this day is not too baffling for you, nor is it beyond your reach. It is not in the heavens that you should say, 'Who among us can go up to the heavens and get it for us and impart it to us, that we may observe it. Neither is it beyond the sea that you should say, who among us can cross to the other side of the sea and get it for us and impart it to us that we may observe it. No, the thing is very close to you, in your mouth and in your heart to observe it. If we align our heart and our speech, our actions will follow. Walking with God means becoming a partner with God in perfecting the world. The delicate balance of healing is to follow while also walking alongside. We must be humble enough to understand that we don't know everything, but confident enough to know that we are full partners and that without our full participation, caring for others and building a better world is not possible. May we all find faith in a trusted source who brings love, compassion, and justice into the world. May we find the humility to follow those worthy of our trust and the confidence to go out and do tikkun olam. May we all be inscribed for another year in the book of life. Gemar Chatima Tova.